Does a mic work? Before I sit down, how many people have seen Stanley Tucci Searching for Italy? All right. I think that's the most preposterous premise I've ever heard. Can Stanley Tucci Searching Italy find good food? Like, how hard is that? Okay? Now, I have a similar job today. Can I find, will these people have something interesting to say? How could it not be, right? Okay, so why don't we start there? We were here, another building, another place, but it felt sort of like this a year ago. I think Kahn was under wraps at the time, so I had a slightly awkward exchange about that. I think that that's now, open for discussion. You've launched this, you've had great success. How's it gone? What are some of the things that have really gone well? And what do you?
Yeah, it is amazing. It's been a year. I think I came really close to violating our non-disclosure agreement our last year. I probably did in spirit in some ways. The context last year, obviously ChatGPT had been out, the large language model, generative AI, boom had started, and but we, at the time, people predicted GPT-4 was coming. We had been working with it for about 5 months at the time, and it was an interesting transition state that this time last year, the consensus on ChatGPT was this is going to be a real problem for education, cheating, much less, it wasn't designed for education, hallucinations, math errors. And what I was really hoping to talk about, and I think I foreshadowed a little bit, is, I think, one, the models are about to get a lot better. Still not perfect. Hallucinations and math errors are still a major issue. But there are ways to address the cheating issue. There's ways to put guardrails on it. There's ways to handle security and data privacy and all of that. And just to get caught up on what the last year has been like, we were afraid in March, I think it was March 15th, when we launched alongside GPT-4, what's now called Kahn, because we thought there was just going to be a ton of negative pushback from education. And I don't want to jinx it by saying this, but
so far so good.
So far so good. It was. I think people were looking for, hey, they had come full circle. They said we want something that has the power, but it's special purpose for education, et cetera, et cetera. And what we're seeing now is I actually couldn't have predicted. We're seeing more interest and demand from K-12 and higher education than we could.
What are one or two things you're most pleased about? It seems like it's gone really well from my perspective.
Yeah, it's overall, yes.
Yeah.
Even us this time last year, we're like, okay, this is going to be a pilot. We'll see how it goes. And every week it's been more and more of the organization where now this is essentially what most of the organization is.
Yeah. So students who have a question, they're struggling with something, they can ask and they get a good answer. How does that work?
At a very high level, and this is, many of the projects we just saw are speaking the same language, but, you could say a tutor for every student, a teaching assistant for every teacher. But I think what really is, and look, it's still imperfect there. We could talk about, it does, the math is still a challenge and all of that. But I think we're starting to see interesting dynamics that even transcend what you would think a tutor would do. We've talked about talking to AI simulations or having an AI facilitate. We just saw that project, and we're exploring similar things. Having an AI facilitate conversations with people. There's all the classic workflow stuff that teachers have to do, but there's the things where teachers have to communicate with different parties, and maybe the AI intermediation could be interesting. Well, anyway, I could go on for a very long time about all of the different opportunities, but yeah, it's a pretty exciting time.
Yeah, Chris leads with Maran Sahami a course called Code in Place that offers introductory computer science to 10,000 students every spring. Last year was the first year with generative AI. How did that go, and what did you learn?
Yeah, oh my gosh, I feel like this is the most fun year for being in our field. It's like we get to create all these things that we always dreamed about. So I think we had it was kind of the year of 1,000 flowers blooming. And so there was a series of wonderful small experiments, everything from just-in-time feedback on complicated ideas like style and what sorts of errors are happening in your program, practicing teacher training. We even got people programming by pencil and paper, thanks to AI, because you can take photos of people's handwritten code and understand it. And through all of this, we have seen an uptake in people learning more. And the other thing about Code in Place, we have 1,000 teachers. And thanks to Dora and a lot of other wonderful projects, we've been able to make teachers more effective at their work. So it seems there's all these opportunities. We've just scratched the surface. What a time.
One or two significant challenges? Anything not go as smoothly as you expected?
You know, we had a lot of success in very specifically tailored tools. We had, in our classroom, we tried to get people to use just an open-ended chat, and I don't think we executed in exactly, as well as Conmigo, but we had motivational problems where, not at the beginning, but 2 weeks later, people weren't engaging with the class as much. So I feel like getting this incredible direct assessment to also inspire students is something we still are trying to figure out.
So any challenges that stand out? Things?
Oh, so many. Just the pace of change is so rapid, and in the case of Conmigo, every 3 months there's essentially a new model. I mean, it's still GPT-4 and now GPT-4 Turbo, and now we're playing with Google's Ultra and Gemini Ultra and all of this, and even if you're sticking with one model, they're different. And I think everyone is still. We've been working for over a year plus on the tools you need to make sure that your prompts aren't regressing, that the math isn't falling apart. So there's just all of that stuff of just keeping up with the change and keeping the quality high when there's a lot of folks using it. We got some really good feedback from the early days and continue to with teachers. I mean, it's great to be able to talk to AI simulation of George Washington, but you might not want that if they need to focus on their factoring polynomials. So we're just launching things like focus mode. We're launching district dashboards. We're launching, there's a whole universe of things where we actively notify a parent, we can do that too, but a teacher if a conversation looks like it's going in the wrong direction. District officials wanted that as well. We think Conmigo at scale is handling math and hallucinations better than anyone, but it's still nowhere near as good as we want, and every day we get examples that make us cringe that we want to fix. But there's a lot of other, we're doing the writing stuff, we're thinking about ways that the AI can handle administering questions and et cetera. And we realize the AI is still nowhere close to prime time yet to write questions, but maybe administer.
Yeah, I think a year ago it was sort of unknown whether this kind of thing would be successful. So when I hear you talk about what went well and what could have gone better or what was challenging, there's nothing close to, we might shut it down because. I mean, I think we're going in this direction for the duration is my impression. You agree on that? Sal, your organization is involved with serving students, teachers, school districts, all over the country, all around the world. What would you say, or what would you recommend to help teachers, learn the skills they need in order to use your tools effectively? How do you interact with school systems, and what's your perspective there?
Yeah, I'll take it in reverse order. Right when we launched in March of last year, we started going to some school districts that already had a high fidelity usage of classic Khan Academy, and these are places like the North Ward of Newark, New Jersey, and Hobart, Indiana, and that's where we started getting our initial feedback from. And we're talking about single-digit thousands of students and teachers at the time. As we went into back to school, we started ramping up on the order of about 10,000 folks a month. It's now on the order of about 100,000 folks. And we think this time next year we'll be looking at 1 to 2 million. So the ramp up is far, far faster. The main things that we are learning is you need to make a lot of the teacher interview. Irene here leads the team that helps support all of these teachers and districts and training and all of that. And you need a lot of hand holding. First of all, just to get the right, not to be afraid of it. It's not here to replace teachers. If any, it's going to empower teachers. It's going to help hopefully amplify human interactions. But then we're learning there's a lot more work on the product side. Those who know how to, I don't say even know how to use it, know what it can do, and then use it, they're getting a lot of value. But for a lot of folks, it's almost like the things you can do are almost moving faster than the imagination right now. So we have to make that more obvious. We have to make that more obvious through the product. We have to make that more obvious through the training. And then there's the whole there's the whole dimension of how do you actually make sure that it's safe and
do teachers need any particular training? Do you have a way of bringing them up to speed on what the tools can do for them? How does that work?
Yeah, it's evolving as we speak, but we have a whole, we're finding, even though in some ways many of us would consider it a more natural way to interface, we are finding that we have to do more training when we partner a district here than we would have had to with classic Khan Academy, because you almost have to realize you have permission to say anything you want to it, and it will actually be able to give you actionable things. So yeah, we are ramping in this coming year. All of these people are going to start using it, and I think our biggest fear is, well, one, we have to make the product better and better, but we have to make sure that people have a good taste in their mouth.
Are you getting pushback, or do you anticipate that, or how do you see this working from an institutional or organizational standpoint over some period of time?
I don't want to jinx it.
Yeah. I mean,
we haven't.
I don't know how to ask the question.
Yeah, we haven't gotten any significant. This time last year there was very spirited debates inside of our organization, and there still are. Well, if we can't get the math perfect, what's the threshold at which we feel comfortable using it? If we can't get the hallucinations perfect, what's the threshold? What guardrails do we have to put in place? In certain cases, are they too strict of guardrails or not? Those are the things that we've been struggling with. But the broader pushback, every now and then there was a New York Times article like 2 weeks ago on us, and it kind of left. It was a fair article, but I couldn't help but read the message boards.
Yeah, you'd rather not.
It kind of had the feeling of like, oh, these Silicon Valley, blah blah blah. They would never use this on their own kids, and I'm like, no, that picture was from my kid's school, and you should want it being, it's. And anyway, but overall, it's been good.
Yeah. So, Chris, at the college level, how do you see things proceeding? Is everyone going to be using the code and place tools for computer science, and will this spread beyond to other fields? What do you think is going to happen at the college level?
I mean, certainly we'll see wonderful tools from Code and Plays, Khan Academy, all of you guys as well. But I think maybe the biggest change has got to be that we're going to enter like this new era of creation. Like I taught a probability class. Probability is way more exciting than it sounds. But they still have to learn the basics. There's no, and during the class I said, learn the basics. Don't become over-reliant on the tools. You still have to take my exam. We actually made them do an oral exam practice as well. But maybe the most interesting thing is there was a part of the class where I said, well, you've learned this material. Go make the most wonderful thing you can imagine. Use as much ChatGPT as you want. And the things that came back were incredible. They're like, methane detection algorithms, and a whole plethora of medical applications, just joyful, fun artwork. And you can kind of tell that these students were having a very different experience than they'd ever had in my probability class. Yeah. My daughter, she's 3 years old. We have a printed book that she's made with all the images from ChatGPT. She told a story, we made all the images, we put some text on it, and she can hold her book. She's a total amateur. This is like complete amateur hour. We're going to be able to make in ways that we haven't been able to make before. I think that's coming for the university slowly, step by step.
Yeah, great. What strategies do you think we need to help students and educators stay at the forefront? I mean, that's a little bit of a hard question because I'm not sure that any of us feel that we're at the forefront, even though we're doing our best to follow the technology. But there are people who are experimenting and trying to, and have some sense of what the technology can and can't do, and feel a little bit in the flow of advances. And there are probably a lot of people who are, invested in education, committed, teachers, organizers, and how do you think we could help them, or what do you think could be done to bring everyone along, let's say?
I'll start with a short one. Yeah. The single experiment that had the biggest effect size in Code and Place had nothing to do with AI. It was just a really clever way to get teachers to have one-on-one experiences with students that was relatively respectful of their time. And you saw like 10 percentage point improvements in course completion by talking to a person. Not necessarily a skilled teacher, actually quite amateur beginner teachers often, but just that human connection mattered so much. My daughter was deaf, so when I found out, like, language learning was a real big necessity. It wasn't something casual. And so what do we do is I got all the humans I could involved, you know, tutor for her. I got a tutor for myself for ASL. It was the time of large language models. I could have just given her GPT, but I did not. So there's this deep power in humans. We're going to get this efficiency boost for sure. And so I suppose to answer your question, as we get this efficiency boost, I would like to see us all use it for more teaching, more human instruction, welcoming more people into the fold and say, hey, with some support, you too can be an instructor. You too can pass on knowledge, which is a beautiful human thing. So I think this is our chance to center human teaching even more. Will we take it? I don't know. Hopefully.
Any further thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, everyone here is on the forefront. There is a weird thing going on where all of us feel like we're falling behind. I guess it's just such a big forefront that there's just so many people in it that you always feel like, I mean, and it does feel like if you sleep for like a week or two that all of a sudden there's something new going on. I'm very optimistic. What I'm seeing in education, both at K-12 and higher education, and once again, I don't want to jinx it, I think education is going to be the first major industry, or one of the first, that is using it in a large systemic way, hopefully for the better. We have a school district out here, not too far from you. I don't want to say their name just because they haven't necessarily given me permission yet, but they've told us that they believe that it's already saving their teachers 5 hours per teacher per week. Using these types of tools. That's a very tangible thing, and then when we go tell other superintendents about it, they're like, and they're actually using it as a recruiting tool because there's record attrition and teacher burnout and all of that. So that's a good thing, and I'm not even hearing about those types of things in you know, it's not taking anyone's jobs. There's other industries where it probably will take other jobs. It's a net enhancement to what's already happening. So I think what we all can do is just make these tools easier and easier to use, and also put in all the guardrails and the training and everything else so that people feel permission to use it.
Yeah, it occurs to me as you say that this could be one situation in which the decentralized, chaotic nature of education is actually working, and that different organizations, different schools, different teachers can pick up things at different points. Do you see any issues or any thoughts on, you know, safety and ethical behavior of AI? Any comments on that? And then we'll have kind of come to the end of the question I have and take some from the audience here.
I mean, you could imagine before we launched, we had all pretty dark scenarios of what could go wrong. Especially if you put a middle schooler in charge of, you know, open-ended conversation with a bot and all of that.
Knows?
For the most part, we have found that, you know, the guardrails that we've been put in place have been good. In fact, I think they've probably erred on the side of too many false positives. And we're, you know, my daughter, even at her school, she was telling Kahn, hey, really help me, I want to beat the other team. And I interpreted that as that she wanted to physically beat the other team. And then her teacher got notified. But that stuff's happening. But, you know,
it could happen if you passed a note under the desk.
Yes, yes. But overall, I know I sound like the most superstitious person. I don't want to jinx it. But as far as I'm aware, nothing horrible has happened.
Right.
And if anything, we're probably getting more requests to loosen its guardrails than to tighten them. But you know, people are rightfully cautious here. But I just hope that you know, we're being very careful about not sharing the, you know, personally identifiable information with the model, and the model creators or producers, they're also very careful that it doesn't show up and, you know, people can't look for where somebody lives. But just in case we're doing that, none of the data that we are going back and forth with the model, it's all transactional. It can't be used for future training of the general model. So we're trying to do all of the precautions we can so that we don't get into a scenario that will put a bad taste in folks' mouth.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that, Chris?
Yeah, so there's one scenario that is probably keeps me up at night, which is, imagine this. Imagine a large language model is trained on internet data and has like some deep demographic biases. They throw in some reinforcement learning from human feedback, and it makes it so that it never spits out language that is biased. But imagine your teacher says, I'm going to write a letter of recommendation. Here's a person's resume. Write it for them. What if you just took that same resume and you changed the name on top, and then it all of a sudden starts producing different letters? Neither letter is going to be atrocious or like flag anything, but maybe you would write a stronger letter for somebody just based off their demographics. That keeps me up at night a lot. And a lot of our tools, we keep looking for evidence of this. We haven't found it yet, but it doesn't mean it's not there. But on a flip side, there is this other thing that's happened. I have a lot of conversation with Stanford HR. We have like 1,000 teachers, and they're all having these Zoom, and they're from everywhere in the world. I think I terrify them. And actually, GPT has helped me enable human-to-human conversations in more ways because we now have something that can be looking for unsafe conversations. We can have discussion forums that are more public because we can flag if somebody says something that would be harmful to other students. So there's these great opportunities, and I lose a little sleep.
I'll just say, on this notion of the bias, I have no doubt that not only is that plausible, but it probably is somehow deeply embedded in some of these models. But I've just been an advocate of like, well, let's compare it to what the status quo is. And the reality is, you can't audit a recommender and say, hey, write these 10 different recommendations for this otherwise identical with different names or different gender. You can't do that. This is auditable. So I think a completely bias-free, that's almost like some ideal that might, but if I think we'll be able to get in the not too far future, maybe there's something maybe folks are already working on this, where you can run regression tests and you could say like, hey, this is already probably better than the status quo because we can actually measure it.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's a number of interesting questions coming in. So let me just wrap up with the ones I had, which is, let's suppose we're here again in a year. What are your major goals, and what are you planning to do, and how do you think that will change education over the next year?
It is amazing how fast things are happening. A year from now, hopefully we're talking about even a much larger scale. I just said a year from now we'll be talking to 1 to 2 million. Hopefully a year from now I'm saying a year from now we'll be 4 or 5 million. And once again, we're getting to this world of like, this is turning into a very mainstream thing. I'm really excited about, we have some projects that if you asked me 2 years ago, I thought Khan Academy would not be able to do it for maybe even my lifetime. We're doing some really fun things around writing, where a teacher can create the assignment, create the rubric, Khanmigo works with the student on it, and then reports back to the teacher the entire process. And it can even give insights on the process across students. Hey, these kids are having trouble with thesis statements. These kids are having trouble outline. I was just seeing a design mock-up earlier today where there's a playback feature where you can see, a teacher can see how they are writing with the AI. And this would have all seemed like science fiction. Not only do we think it's going to undermine the cheating issue, because now the process is much more transparent. You can see if people are just sequentially writing a whole essay or copying and pasting, or it's not consistent with their other work, that you need to introspect on that. But it's going to support students. I've spent a lot of my career talking about math and science and mastery learning and the importance of personalization. But when you really think about writing, it's dramatically worse. You get the amount of feedback you get in writing and how much time it takes and how expensive it is historically is the reason why writing, and honestly also because standardized tests have not historically measured true writing, you see pretty much an epidemic in writing being really bad amongst a lot of folks now. And so very excited about that. I think you're going to see more conversational, like literally talking to the AI. I think us and others are going to be much more creative of like, okay, the chat interface is nice, but there's going to be other modalities that are going to be pretty cool. I think you're going to start seeing, maybe a year from now, the live video will start becoming I think it'll still be a research project level. It's not going to be productized yet, but yeah, things are happening fast.
Yeah, that's great. Very exciting. Chris, what would you like to do in a year? Code in place a year and a few months from now. Where would you like to see that?
I'll choose 2 for me and 1 for you guys. Okay, so one is I really want to spark joy. I have a friend. He loves dirt, and he'll be like, you want to hear something cool about dirt, and he just pulls you in, and you're so curious, and you just want to know everything, and you want to go learn, and it's just this deep, beautiful emotion. So far, I haven't seen AI that has sparked that sort of joy that can like bring you into that space of curiosity. So that's one goal.
Right.
Another goal for us is, we used to have traditional teachers, but then we said, well, let's welcome more people into the teaching fold. Everyone will have a small group of 10, and then we saw great improvements. I hope that we can blur the line even more between students and teachers so that, as you're learning, you get to turn around and instruct others. I know lots of people have done this in brick and mortar classrooms, but if we can pull this off at scale. But then the challenge for you all is, it's got to be this creation thing, right? Can you guys make project-based learning a thing? Can we make it so that middle school students who are learning math can like turn their math insight into a beautiful tool that they can bring home and show their parents? I always think that programming is a little bit of a, okay, this comes from Dan Schwartz. He will say that programming is a privileged domain because our students are always making things that they can show their friends and their parents. And I think by this time next year, that privilege should be in all domains. And I look forward to that.
Yeah. So this kind of leads into the first question I see here that's come in via the QR code here. It's a big question, and it's in some sense harder to predict, but it's really, how do you see the types of skills and knowledge? What will students want to learn? What should we try to focus on teaching in the new era in which AI is available in so many kinds of activities? Does that really change what we should be teaching, the curriculum, and how do you think about that as someone involved with the tools and the development of education?
I'm a bit of a traditionalist plus. I think the reading, writing, the mathematics is actually even more important. What everyone talks about is, if you're kind of a middling writer, you're going to be in trouble because the AIs can already do that. But the ideal place is if you can up-level to the point that you can manage the AIs, you can integrate the AIs. And I think there's going to be a lot of runway there. We can fantasize about what GPT-7 might be able to do, but I think for a very long time, there's going to be a role of creative people being able to put the pieces together and do thoughtful things. So that means, if for my kids, for anyone's kids, learn their math really well, learn their science really well, learn so that they, and then if you and the AIs will hopefully help there. And that's what many of us are working on. And then above and beyond that, the types of stuff that Chris has mentioned, like, all right, now just take the raw, all the tools out there and just make the coolest thing that you can make. I've been I have a little project. I have a book coming out on AI in education, not a surprise. And they, when the publisher first came to me, I wanted to write a science fiction book. Then they're like, Sal, that's not your lane, and all of that. So I'm not writing a science fiction book because they didn't want me to. But I've always wanted to write a science fiction book. So like I'm able to work on it like an hour every month right now. So I'm not getting a lot done on it. But I'm like, okay, let me make this I think I know what great science fiction looks like because I read a lot of it. And I have some, I think, good ideas for premises. I want to be able to work with these tools to maybe, do what your 3-year-old daughter did and do my version of he's 47 and look what he produced.
I would read this book for sure if you want. Bring your draft next year, okay?
That sounds good.
We could go into this question a little more specifically, I think, with computer science, because I think the nature of programming is really changing. So how do you see, for example, this introduction to programming or the first 2 or 3 courses changing? I think that'll have to happen in the next 3 to 5 years. What do you think?
Okay, this time last year I was playing it cool, but I was terrified. I teach intro computer science, and then all of a sudden this thing can program like incredibly well. I think everyone in this room is aware of how good it is at math and writing, but its real skill is programming. Like it is, and I thought I'd have to hang up my hat. I was like, especially for the intro, like, am I just done here? A little like tear, because I really like teaching. And maybe this is like some weird self-serving conclusion I've arrived at, but then we saw more people taking the classes, both the public one that we teach to folks around the world and also at Stanford. And trying to understand what was going on there, I think the story is maybe more self-evident, which is it's more fun programming than any time before. You can go from idea space to creation. If you know a little bit of programming, a little bit of debugging, you can now take that and create real products. So I actually do think that we can bring more people into the fold of programming. Not everyone needs to learn machine code anymore. We don't have to go to that level, but if you could learn just a little bit, your own ability to create, it's gonna skyrocket.
So that will turn into something really different in our beginning courses, I assume, but how do you, like, will that happen near Tarn, or are we all just gonna talk about the future of being?
I'm gonna teach my class like this. I'm gonna say, hey, come in, tell me the most wonderful thing you wanna make. Okay, great, let's tell you why you need to know the basics to get to that. Okay, give me 4 weeks of your time. I'm gonna teach you the basics so well, and you're gonna know them inside and out, and then after that, then we're going to talk about how you can use AI to multiply your fundamental understanding. But I'm not skipping the fundamentals.
Yes, it could be the first few courses stay somewhat the same.
Yeah.
And then when you get to a project course or build an operating system or build a web app, then all of the modern tools get to be applicable, and that changes things. Here's a question: how do you see the implementation of Kahn Migo in emerging markets? Not only considering the access challenges, but the possibility of increasing more the social equity in a region. How do you think about that set of issues?
Oh, it's a real one, and well, there's a bunch of layers that I'm not sure if this question is asking that, but a flavor of this question is, hey, is this potentially going to drive up inequities? Because I'm guessing people in this part of the world are already using these tools much more than anywhere else, even if you look at the U.S. On that one, my view has always been, even before AI, that rather than look at the proportions and who's overrepresented using it and who's underrepresented using it, is think about what happens when you take the tools away. And I used to make this argument even for traditional Khan Academy. It's like if you have a library, if I'm guessing the local Palo Alto library, if you looked at the demographics, there's probably a lot of very affluent people using the library, maybe even overrepresented of affluent people using the library. And so you might say, hey, maybe this library is driving inequity because the affluent are using it more than the less affluent. The educated are using it even more. But the real way is to not look at the proportion. The real way is to look what happens when you take the library away. You take the library away, all of those affluent folks, well-educated folks using it are just going to find other solutions, maybe a little bit more friction. But then there's a lot of folks that did not have an alternative, and now they're... So I think the same thing you're going to see with generative AI, which is many of us, if our kids are struggling, might be able to afford a $50 an hour tutor. And now generative AI brings that down significantly. But there's a lot of folks who they couldn't even dream about a $5 an hour tutor, much less a $50 an hour tutor. And now that this gets that closer to reach. And then international, it's interesting. The main reason why we haven't been able to roll out more internationally faster, one, we've been learning a lot about certain languages are the English prompts kind of work, and certain languages, we had an issue with Mandarin where the guardrails, well, anyway, so we have to, but we're just trying to make sure that we're up and up on all of the legal side of things and all of that. But I'm hopeful. We have two dedicated instances of GPT-4 right now, and it's not being used, or it's very underutilized in the middle of the night, which is perfect for India, perfect for the Philippines. So, we're looking at ways that we might be able to deliver it in these parts of the world at a much lower cost. And another really good point of news, if I was able to violate the NDA last year, I would have said, oh yeah, this is going to cost like $15 per user per month in order to support it, and that's frankly what ChatGPT Pro still costs if you use GPT-4. It's the between optimizations we're trying to do plus what the large language model creators are doing. I think that you're going to be able to create great experiences using frontier models for on the order in the let's say the U.S. You're going to be able to do it for on the order of $20 to $30 per year, not per month. And then, like a lot of the things in the internet, that will pay for a lot of this capacity, and then you might be able to do it in India or the Philippines or Vietnam for $5 a year, which once again makes it much more accessible.
Yeah, Chris, you mentioned someone writing code by pencil and paper and then taking a picture. What are some of the things that you did to try to make code in place accessible in different parts of the world?
Yeah, that's certainly one of them. So maybe if you have access to a phone but not dedicated access to a phone, then we can still give you CS education. I'm really excited about that. I'm also excited about that for like my own daughter when she's learning to program. I think it's just beautiful pedagogy. But here's the most fun thing. I saw a video the other day of Mehran, my co-instructor, teaching in Hindi. He doesn't speak Hindi, but it's like beautiful, perfect Hindi, and it looks like him, and it sounds like him. His jokes are just as corny. And there was this moment about a year ago when I thought we were about to fracture. We're like this great United Nations class where people are in a section with like somebody from Jamaica, from Thailand, and I thought we were going to have to end that because of language. And the large language models, I think, means that we can be brought together. You know, we could be having a conversation. I could be speaking Swahili, you could be speaking, you know, Bangla, and then I think we can get real-time translation. And so I think accessibility for us, we're seeing a really exciting opportunity.
Yeah, that's a really
My
great.
experience is most jokes are cornier in Hindi. I have a very functional understanding of Hindi, and like family members will tell a joke, and I'm like, and then I'm like, maybe I'm not getting, and then they explain it in English. I was like, yeah, it's what I thought it was. It's pretty corny.
Bar may be different. There's a question here about social learning, and you know, it says we are social learners who learn best from other humans. How will Conmigo or the things you're using in Code in Place tap into social learning in the future? How do you think about that?
Yeah, is what we've always talked about, well, before generative AI, is that ideally, like, you know, there are people who are learning by themselves, they have no supports, and this was kind of even before generative AI. Hopefully you can raise the floor for them, give them access to courses, get them support. But our dream, even before generative AI, of the ideal classroom is students can learn at their pace, teachers are getting more data, but the classroom, people are helping each other, the teacher's going and doing focused small group interventions versus just one thing for all 30 students. We hope that AI will only accelerate that. We already have tools with Conmigo where it reports to the teacher, hey, this is how your kids are doing, and by the way, this group of kids is struggling with this concept, and it's a conversational thing, and hey, here are 5 kids to celebrate. And you know, Khan Academy is a not-for-profit. I have to raise a lot of money. I have a not so large team, but sometimes when I go to some of these fundraising events, I have someone who's whispering to me on the way there, or is like, okay, make sure you talk to that person. That person donated this. Make sure you bring up that project, and don't get this number wrong. And you know, and I have that support. Imagine if a teacher has that support. And I think all of us remember those moments where a teacher walks up to you and says, great job, Sal. And it's not artificial. It's still the teacher is processing it. Something we do at Khan Academy where I ask the broader team, hey, if anyone does something great within the organization, let me know. And I'm just going to send a text message or a Slack to that junior engineer, that intern, and they feel seen and heard, and they are seen and heard because I am processing that, and I might copy and paste that mess, but I tweak it, and then but it registers that wow, that intern is doing really interesting work.
That's great.
So I think there's and we talked about AIs facilitating conversations with people. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting things there.
The Code in Places inherently has a social component. Do you see AI being important there, and how would that work?
Yeah, I mean, just that's what I was going to say is just like we are first and foremost social, and then the AI is augmenting it, and we've certainly seen AI be very helpful for augmentation. I still will say that I think we do not talk about how incredible a technology Zoom is. I feel like we could have a whole conference like this about how Zoom is bringing the world closer together. And
but we do that in person, right?
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so everything that people have talked about, like, AI can help moderate, it can help amateurs become teachers much faster. We have this wonderful teacher training. You can practice your teaching on GPT students before you start. You can practice your oration skills and have a dynamic conversation. And we're trying all these things, and they all seem to be bringing some joy and moving the needle.
And on the Zoom point, at first I was processing, and I know a good sponsor for your conference, but we have a sister nonprofit called Schoolhouse.World, which is all about free tutoring, leveraging volunteers, all on Zoom. Zoom donated a bunch of licenses so that we could do that. But that is because everything is happening in that format. You get the transcripts. We are also using generative AI to give feedback to these volunteer tutors on what they could do better. And I think we're months away from giving real-time feedback. Hey, you haven't called on the student. I think this is what they're asking. Once again, being able to let that human be even a stronger human than before.
Yeah, I think capturing a transcript and giving that to a language model offers a lot of possibilities. That's a great point. Here's a question which I hope I represent accurately. It's basically about industry and ownership of leading large language models and business incentives and education being sort of at right angles to many business incentives. How do you see kind of the financial and business aspects of AI and technology being aligned or disaligned with the things you'd like to do? And how do you, any comments for the questioner about that?
I mean, I'll question for you. Like, if OpenAI shut down tomorrow, how hosed are we?
Oh yeah, if OpenAI and Google
And Google
if everyone-
and Mixtral maybe.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, there's a ton of questions in that. You know, I think the big one that the courts will decide, which really, like, I could argue either side of this one, which is if a large language model reads proprietary work or slurps it in, whatever we want to call it, trains on it, and it creates novel work that has been somehow influenced by that, you know, is that cool or not?
Yeah.
Obviously, we can read work and be inspired by it and make something similar, and that's going to be settled in the courts. So, and I could literally argue either side of that. Either side of that. The one thing I am hopeful for is, obviously, there's been a lot of talk in Washington about social media. I'm pretty negative on social media. All of the business incentives around social media, and then they make the AIs do the bidding of those business incentives, have not been good. If your objective function is keep someone watching as long as possible, and ideally make them start to click on ads, unfortunately, that's triggering content. That's content that's probably going to make you depressed and feel FOMO and insecure and all of these, and more polarized, all of these horrible things. And the social media companies have claimed, well, you know, free speech, we're just creating a platform. We don't want to, you know, get in. And it is hard to start saying that's okay, and that I get that's hard, but it's also a little bit, it's in their incentive. The large language models are interesting because I think it's very clear that OpenAI, if GPT-4 says something horrible, it's their brand. You know, if something horrible is said on TikTok or on Facebook, they kind of say, well, that's not us, we're just giving the platform. But if GPT-4 or Gemini Ultra says something horrible, they know it's their brand at stake. And so I see these large tech companies, and there's, you know, in the US, there's probably 5 or 6 folks with the resources to make these models, you know, frontier models. Their incentive, their business incentives are to keep it, I think, as safe and as bias-free as possible, because they know that all of us and the whole internet are essentially Red Hat testing it, and as soon as anything, people are going to take a screenshot and are going to embarrass them, and then that, you know, the specter of more regulation and all that.
But to try to follow up a little bit on what seems to be implied by the question, you could imagine if LLMs become key to search or to simulated social media, that maybe the models behind those functions will be tuned to keep people interested in engaging with them. And then if you build your educational platform on top of those, you'll reflect those features, right?
Well, I'll tell you a project that I hopefully will help create a bit of a good arms race or a check on that, right? You know, right now the internet's a completely one-sided game. You have state-of-the-art AIs from multi-billion-dollar companies that are just trying to get your eyeballs and keep you attached to it. You know, we are, in about 2 months, we're going to launch Conmigo existing outside of Khan Academy. And so that's another thing. A year from now, we're going to be talking about Conmigo existing in many other places. But imagine, you know, it could be useful for a teacher. They're at some place like, hey, let's create a lesson plan anchored on this, and et cetera. But you can imagine how students can read an article and then get support in it, and maybe even it can rephrase things or explain things. But as a parent, I'm very excited, and look, actually not just a parent, even for myself, I'm excited about the possibility of that AI being motivated by what's good for my child or what's good for me. And so, hey, okay, you just spent 30 minutes watching YouTube. Now I want you to go do your Khan Academy, or want you to go play outside a little bit, or hey, here's a meditation exercise I'll lead you through. I think that type of, I mean, there's no reason why that can't already exist. Right. And you can do much more fine-grained control. Right now, it's a very heavy-handed way of, you know, you have GoGuardian and these things that'll either shut sites down, or, but you're going to have subtle, like, okay, you could watch that video, or you could watch the first 2 minutes of that video, but then it's going to go into some content that I don't think is appropriate for a 9-year-old. And by the way, I'm going to tell your dad that, You've been watching that. And look, I think it's going to be useful for us too. Like, hey, I thought you were looking for, medication you're doing research on medication for your mom, but why are you, stalking your ex-girlfriend on social media right now? Like, do you feel better about yourself? And I think that type of thing, it'll be a thoughtful advisor.
All right, we're down to the last 40 seconds, and we've gotten into stalking on social media. So I'd like to give a chance to turn a little bit before the end. So any kind of closing thoughts or comments? Maybe Chris first, and then Sal.
Well, I wanted to build on that, so.
Whatever you like.
Okay, so I like this idea of you writing your science fiction novel. I suppose that's maybe one of the most exciting things that I got from this, because how great would that be? You've not been trained to write a science fiction novel. That's got to be huge for us in education. And if somebody who's young can write a science fiction novel, what do they need from a brick and mortar school? Like, what if your kids write an amazing science fiction novel? Will that pull them into a really interesting career much faster than could have possibly happened before? What does that look like? So I'll leave on that note.
I'll build on that. I mean, YouTube and social media have created this. I'm going to get the numbers wrong. People can look it up, but there's some number it's something like 25% of all people under 25, or between 13 and 25, think that they will be famous imminently. there's some, you can check the numbers, but it's something like that. And on one level, that's depressing, but on another level,
they're optimistic.
They're optimistic, but they have the tools where it's plausible.
Okay.
Which is, when I was 14, it wasn't even plausible that I could create a channel or do something that could somehow be discovered. And I found this whole writer strike in Hollywood to almost be backwards. It should have been the producers trying to negotiate with the writers, saying, hey, if you come up with a good movie idea, please involve us. Don't just go and create the movie. Because, you remember, we were there when you needed $100 million. Now you're only going to need $100 to create the movie. Remember us. We can still do some useful things. That should have been the conversation. And the writer should have said, hey, I'm the person who had the vision and the idea. And before, I got a little sliver of everything. Now I could produce the entire movie. I could get within 10 years, you're going to be able to do the editing. You're going to be able to create, realistic scenes. You're going to be able to do, when you think about, and you're not going to have to be a 30-year-old or a 40-year-old. You can be a 14-year-old. And so when you think about, just think about how much talent, what can be called talent or not, I was discovered, I wouldn't have been discovered on YouTube, or I wouldn't have been in the education space had it not been for something like this. And if you think about how many people, there's Steven Spielberg and all of these, amazing, but I'm guessing for every one of them that gets the opportunity, there's probably 500 other people, at least, who could make, but they're just doing other things right now. But now all of a sudden the threshold to trying those things are going to go a lot lower, so we're going to get a lot more high quality creative things and a lot more people get discovered.
All right, I guess we're going to leave it there. Time's up, and there's a reception out in the hallway, and it appears to be many, many interesting people to talk to. So, great day.
Hey, such cool work. Yeah, I love it. I'm such a fan.